Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Caught you off guard there, didn't I?
Yeah, I looked okay, so for all of our listeners, let me give some context. I looked to my left monitor and asked a question, and then I looked back and I see a counter going 3, 2, 1, live, and I'm like, "Oh, hello."
Yes, welcome. Uh,
My
yeah,
question was
welcome
answered.
back.
It's fine if anyone's
Yeah.
worried. Hello. Oh my
So,
goodness.
welcome to
All
our
right.
scary stories. I'm
Yes.
Brody.
I'm Meet.
Welcome
Welcome back
back or
or
welcome for the
welcome.
first time
Yeah. Or the second time.
or the
Welcome
second.
anytime.
You just whoever's here.
Whenever you show up, whether it's consistent or not, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Might question your sanity, but that's fine too. All right. Well, I think I'm starting today, and I've I've been on this elder kick lately. I can't shake it. I'm obsessed. Okay, I'm gonna be the muse for the next piece this person writes. It's the goal.
Can you move your mic back just a little bit?
Yes.
Picking
How's
up breath.
All right. How are we now?
Much better.
All
Okay.
right, sorry. I'm just
You're good.
literally panting over this author apparently. I can't help it.
I apologize if you can hear my cat in the background. There is nothing I can do about it. So,
He's trying to join the team, okay? Like,
yes.
we
No, he
don't have
just
a
wants
room.
food. He says, "Feed me," which will make sense with the story. It actually goes with the story I'm reading today. So, you know.
Oh. That's so
She's like,
heartwarming.
I don't like that."
I don't know how I feel about that now.
All right.
All
Well,
right,
you ready?
I'm ready. Do you
All
have your
right.
popcorn?
Take it away.
Alright. So, the one I'm reading today is by Zeldry, aka Pentyworth223 on Reddit, and it is titled I Took a Job Guarding a Shed in the Forest. The shed wasn't the problem. I don't believe in easy money. Not anymore. Easy money was always a story you told yourself right up until the moment you realized you'd been the punchline the whole time. Still, when Darren Lasky said 1,000 a night, cash, my brain did what it always does when the number gets big. It started editing reality for me. It shaved off the parts that didn't fit, the weird parts, the parts that made your stomach tighten. $1,000 would cover the back rent. It would get my phone turned back on. It would keep the lights from getting shut off again. And because the last notice wasn't a warning, it's a countdown. $1,000 would make the dent in my life look less like a crater. I'd been living on whatever work I could get. Week to week cleanup, moving jobs that ended with me hauling someone else's expensive couch up 4 flights of stairs while they watched. A couple late night shifts at a gas station that smelled like old coffee and disinfectant that never quite won. That's where Darren found me. He was leaning on the counter like he'd been poured there. Boots still dusty, ball capped pulled low. I recognized him from around town. One of those guys who was always between projects, but never really actually broke. Always had a newer truck than he should. Always had a lot of bills he couldn't count. He watched me ring up a pack of gum and a Red Bull for a guy with a shaved head and a face tattoo that looked like a barcode. As soon as the guy left, Darren slid into the spot at the counter like he'd been waiting. You still doing odd jobs? He asked. Depends, I said. My voice came out dry. I'd been up since 6. My hands had that gritty, dried out feeling from hauling busted drywall into a dumpster all day. He nodded like he expected that answer. I've got something. One night at a time. You can stop whenever. No contract. That's what made me actually look at him. What is it? I asked. He didn't glance around like a movie villain. He didn't lower his voice. He said it like it was a normal thing to say under fluorescent lights at 11:47 p.m. Guard a shed. I laughed once, by accident. Guard a shed. Yeah, he said. Calm. You sit out there. You watch it. Don't go inside. Don't leave your post. 7 hours. Why does a shed need guarding? I asked. Because it's on private land, he said. Because people get curious. Because sometimes they do stupid things. I waited for the wink. I'm messing with you. He didn't give me any of it. How much did you say? I asked anyway, because even if it was a joke, my brain wanted to hear it again. 1,000, he said. Cash, in your hand, when you're done. 1,000 a night to sit in a chair and stare at a shed. You'll be bored, he said. You'll be cold. You'll be tired. You'll want to leave early. Why me? I asked. He shrugged. You don't have a record? You don't drink on the job? You're not going to bring friends out there for fun? And you look like you could use the money. That last part hit my pride, but not hard enough to stop me. Where is it? I asked. About 40 minutes out, he said. State forest boundary, old logging road. I drive you in and out, no wandering. Do I need a gun? I asked, half joking, half not. Darren's eyes stayed on mine. No. The way he said it wasn't reassuring. It was final, like the question didn't apply. I should have walked away right then. I should have said no and gone back to my apartment that smelled like stale ramen and damp laundry and tried to sleep. Instead, I said, Tonight? Darren nodded, Tonight if you want. I took my break at midnight and sat on the curb behind the gas station, cold seeping through my jeans. I called my landlord, got voicemail, left a message that sounded too cheerful to be true. Then I went back inside, finished my shift, and clocked out at 2. Darren was waiting outside like he'd never left. He tossed a folded hoodie at me through an open passenger window. Wear this, it gets colder than you think. I got in. This truck smelled like sawdust and cigarettes. It had been smoked too long, some time ago, and never fully left. There was a thermos in the cup holder, a roll of duct tape on the dash, and work gloves shoved into the door pocket. Normal thing. That's what my brain grabbed on. Normal. We drove out of town, past the last strip mall, past the last street light, into the kind of darkness you only get once you leave other people behind. Darren didn't talk much. The radio was off. Heater on low. Road noise filling the space between us. After about 20 minutes, I started to feel stupid again. So, I said, this shed, what's inside it? Darren's jaw tightened. Nothing you need to worry about. That doesn't, it answers what I wanted to answer, he said, still calm, just a little sharper now. I shut up. We turned onto a narrower road, then another that looked like it hadn't been paved since people used payphones. The truck bounced over potholes, trees pressed in close on both sides, black trunks and darker branches. The headlights made everything look flat and unreal, like a tunnel. Darren slowed near a bent metal gate that sat open, one side chained to a post. No sign, no private property, nothing official, just the gate and a dirt road disappearing into trees. He drove through. The dirt road was rutted, the kind of place you'd bottom out in a sedan. The truck handled it like it ran this route every day. We went deeper, the forest swallowing the tire sound. After a while, Darren said, Phone signal dies out here. I noticed, I said, staring at my screen. 1 bar, then nothing. The time had still ticked, 2:51 a.m. He glanced at me. If you need to text someone, do it now. I thought about my mom, thought about what I'd even say. I was 40 minutes from town, no signal, guarding a shed for thousands of dollars like I'd lost my mind. There wasn't a version of that message that didn't make her worried or angry. So I didn't text. Darren pulled into the clearing that looked wrong. Not in a paranormal way, in a human way. Like someone had taken a bite out of the forest and never cleaned up the edges. The shed sat dead center, about 10 foot wide, maybe 8 deep. Old boards, wrapped, warped, and stained. Corrugated metal roof rested at the edges. It looked like it had been there forever. Put the padlock on the door. That was new. The hasp was new. A thick metal plate bolted around it like someone had reinforced it recently. A single motion light was mounted on a pole a few feet away, aimed at the door. It wasn't on, but I could see the lens. There was a folding chair set about 15 feet from the shed, facing it. Next to it, a 5-gallon bucket with a lid, a small cooler, water bottles, a couple protein bars, hand warmers, a flashlight, a cheap digital clock already set. It was too prepared, like someone had done this enough times to learn what mattered. Darren killed the engine. The silence landed immediately. The kind where you hear the last tick of cooling metal and then nothing. No wind, no crickets, no distant highway hiss, just the clearing and the shed. Darren got out and walked to the shed without hesitation. He didn't touch it. He stood by the door and pointed at the lock. "Don't mess with that," he said. I wasn't planning to. Good. He moved to the chair and nudged it with his boot like he was lining up a tool. "You sit there. If you hear something, you stay there. If you see someone, you tell them to leave." "What if they don't?" I asked. Darren turned to me like I'd asked what color the sky was. "They'll leave," he said. He popped the bucket lid and checked inside like he was making sure the supplies hadn't been messed with. That's when he set the digital clock on the cooler. It blinked 2:58. "You're here until 5. I'll be back at 5:15. If I'm late, you still don't leave." "What if you don't come back?" I tried to make it a joke. Darren didn't smile. "I'll come back," he said. "Don't go inside. Don't leave your post." He said it again like saying it twice made it stronger. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. He didn't hand it to me. He held it up like a promise. "You do the full night, you get this." I stared at the envelope. 4 nights of this and I could breathe again. "Okay," I said. Darren nodded. "Sit." I sat. The folding chair creaked under me, cold metal through my jeans. I adjusted, trying to find a position that didn't immediately make my legs go numb. Darren walked back to the truck, started it. Headlights swept across the clearing, over the shed, over me. As he pulled away, he rolled his window down and called, "Don't be stupid." Then the taillights disappeared between the trees. The clearing swallowed the engine noise faster than it should have, like the forest didn't want it here. I sat there, hands tucked under my thighs, staring at an old shed like it could do something to me. At first I felt embarrassed. If someone walked out of these trees and saw me, they'd laugh. A grown man guarding a shed like it was Fort Knox. I clicked the flashlight on and aimed it at the shed. The boards looked swollen from moisture, nails popped in places. The door sagged slightly in the frame, but the lock hardware was solid. Then I noticed the front wall. Fresh mud smeared on the boards, but not like splatter. Like someone had pressed against it and slid down, 4 streaks close together, then one longer one. Not a footprint, not an animal dog. Fingers. I leaned forward, squinting. The ground in front of the door was churned up too, packed down in an oval, like a place where something heavy kept shifting its weight, like it had sat there. My mouth went dry. I told myself it was raccoons, a deer, somebody drunk messing around. I clicked the flashlight off, told myself to save the battery, and listened. That's when I realized there were no bugs, no clicking, no owl, no wind in the leaves, nothing. I'd been in the woods plenty, even in quiet woods. They had sound. This was like someone had muted the world. I stood up and stretched, trying to get blood back into my legs, walked to the cooler and drank water like it was going to fix my nerves. When I turned back towards the shed, the motion light clicked on. I froze. It wasn't bright like a floodlight. It was weak and yellowish, like an old bulb struggling. But it threw a cone of light across the shed door like a spotlight. I hadn't moved near it. I was still by the cooler. I scanned the edge of the light's reach, the boundary where it faded into dark. Nothing was there. The light stayed on for about 10 seconds and clicked off. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. I sat back down and kept the flashlight in my lap, thumb resting on the button. Minutes crawled. At 3:22 I heard something in the woods. Not a branch snap, not footsteps. A drag. Slow, wet, like something being pulled along dirt. It started from my left, just beyond the clearing, then stopped. I held my breath without meaning to. I clicked the flashlight on and aimed it towards the sound the beam cut through the trunks, leaves, patches of ground. Nothing. I waited. The drag started again, farther back now, like whatever it was had moved while I looked. It stopped again. My skin prickled. I clicked the flashlight off and listened. The drag started almost immediately, closer now, and I heard something else with it. A sound like someone swallowing, slow and dry, like their throat was too big and the muscles were working too hard. I stood up. The chair scraped dirt. I kept the flashlight off for one more second because some part of me didn't want to confirm it. Then I snapped it on and swept it along the edge of the clearing. The beam caught the motion of light poles, the shed, the ground, and for half a second it caught something low to the ground near a tree. Not a full shape, just a pale curve, like the side of a rib cage. Then it was gone behind the trunk. My stomach dropped. I aimed at the tree. Nothing. The drag started again on my right. I swung on the flashlight. Nothing. It was moving around me, not rushing, not charging, repositioning, quietly, like it had all the time in the world. The motion light clicked on again. This time it stayed on. The cone of light lay across the shed door, steady. Something about that felt wrong, like the white light wasn't reacting, like it was being activated. I stared at the shed door. The padlock hung still. Then slowly a wet smear appeared on the shed door just beneath the lock, like something pressed fingertips against it from outside. 4 long streaks, then one longer one. Fingers. The smear slid down, leaving a trail. My throat closed. Another smear appeared higher up, just below the roofline, too high for a normal person without standing on something. This one was smaller, just the tips. It dragged them slowly. Something was touching the shed. I couldn't see it, but I could see what it did. The motion light hiccuped, flickering once, and I heard the swallowing sound again. Closer, right at the edge of the clearing. I swung the flashlight towards it and finally caught a piece of it, a forearm. Not fur, not scales, skin. Pale gray, tight over bone, the joint bent wrong, like it had too many angles. The fingers were too long and too thin, ending in dark, blunt tips that could have been nails or something worse. It withdrew behind a tree as soon as the light hit it. I forced my voice out. Hey, this is private property. It came out too thin. Silence. I tried again, louder. You need to leave. No response. The dragging started again behind me. I didn't turn right away. My brain screamed to keep my eyes forward, like looking away would invite it. But the thought of it behind me made my scalp tighten. I turned slowly. The flashlight beam swept across the clearing, and I saw it, crouched near the shed, half in the weak motion light glow, low, like it didn't want to stand up, thin in a way that didn't look like starvation, more like it had been built wrong, ribs visible under skin like stretched canvas, spine rising in sharp bumps. Its head was turned toward the shed door, not toward me. It made that dry swallowing sound again, and I realized it was tasting the air. Then it turns its head slowly towards me, like it had only just remembered I existed. The motion light made its eyes catch white for a second like an animal, but they weren't animal eyes, too forward, too focused. It didn't rush, it didn't growl, it just stared. Then it moved one hand to the shed door and pressed its fingertips against the wood, a light push. Testing. The shed didn't budge. It held there, then pulled its hand away and looked at me again. The corner of its mouth lifted, barely, not a smile, something like one. My chest tightened. I couldn't get enough air. Back up, I said, and my voice came out rough. Back up right now. It blinked slowly. Then it copied my posture. Not perfectly, but close enough to make my stomach turn. It shifted its weight the same way I had. It took a careful step, testing the ground the way I'd done earlier when I got up to stretch. It wasn't just watching me. It was studying. The motion light clicked off. The clearing dropped into deeper darkness, and for half a second I lost it. I snapped the flashlight back on towards where it had been. It was gone. Not sprinted away, not crashing through brush. Gone like it had flowed into the trees without sound. My knees went weak. I sat down hard. I kept the flashlight beam moving, trying to catch movement. Nothing. The silence pressed back in. I checked the clock. 3:41. Over an hour left. Sweat slicked the back of my neck under the hoodie despite my cold. The rest of the night settled into a pattern. Sounds that stopped when I looked, motion lights flickering, a feeling of being watched from just beyond sight. I kept my eyes on the shed more than the woods because the shed felt like the center of it, like everything kept orbiting it. At 4:12, I heard a soft thump from inside the shed. Not a bang, a shift, like weight hitting a wall. Another thump, then a slow scrape along the inside of the boards. I stared at the door, the lock, the reinforced plate. The scrape moved low to high, like fingers dragging upward from inside. My skin crawled. I had a sudden image of someone in there, someone alive, someone trapped. Anger flared hot enough to cut through fear. I stood and took 2 steps toward the shed before I caught myself. Darren's voice. Don't be stupid. I stopped. The scrape stopped. The motion light clicked on again. And I saw something on the shed door that hadn't been there before. A handprint. Not a smear. Pressed from the inside. 5 long fingers splayed, palm too narrow, fingers too long. The print was dark, like oil, and it stayed there. Then another handprint appeared beside it, higher, like whatever was inside pressed both hands against the door to push. The wood didn't move, the lock didn't rattle, but the prints were there, steady. From the woods, the dry swallowing sound answered, closer than it had been all night. I swung the flashlight, nothing, but I felt it. Presence at the edge of the clearing, like someone standing too close in a crowded room. The handprints faded slowly, like the substance soaked into the wood, leaving darker stains. And the shed went quiet again. At 4:55, headlights cut through the trees. Darren's truck rolled into the clearing. He got out like it was any other morning. No coffee this time. No small talk. His eyes flicked to the shed door, then to me. You stay? He asked. My voice didn't work for a second. Yeah, I managed. He nodded like it was a checkbox, then held the envelope out. You do the full night, you get paid. I took it with numb fingers. It was heavier than it looked. Then I looked at him, because I couldn't hold it in. What the hell is that? I said, jerking my chin towards the woods. Darren's expression didn't change. You see something? Yeah, I said, louder than I meant. I saw something out there. It was wrong. He didn't flinch. Did it talk to you? The question landed heavy in my gut. No, I said. Darren's jaw tightened just a fraction. That's good, he said, but it didn't sound good. What's inside the shed? I commanded. He looked at the shed door, and it was a bruise he didn't want to press. Not your business. I heard movement inside, I said. I saw handprints from inside. Darren's eyes sharpened. You saw prints? Yes. He exhaled slowly. For the first time, he looked worn, like someone who'd been carrying something too long. Listen, he said, voice lower. I'm paying you to do a simple thing. You did it, you got your money, you don't need to do it again. I should have said good. I should have left. But my brain did the math again. 4 nights, 5 nights. I could get ahead. I could fix things. What if I want to? I asked, and hated myself as the words came out. Darren stared at me for a long moment, and then he nodded once. Tonight, he said, same time, bring warmer pants. I told myself I'd go one more night. Just one. Get ahead, then stop. That's what I said to myself on the ride out the next night when Darren picked me up again. We hit the clearing and everything looked the same, but I noticed more now. The mud smears on the shed were thicker, fresh. The churned dirt in front of the door was deeper, like something heavy had dug in again. The motion lights, the lens had a faint film over it, like someone had touched it with dirty fingers. Darren set the chair back in place, adjusted the cooler, and pointed at me. You sit, you don't go inside, you don't leave. Why is it always don't leave? I asked. What happens if I leave? Darren looked at me like I was slow. You don't want to find out. He got in the truck and drove away. Night 2, worse. The silence was still there, but now it felt intentional, like something was keeping the forest quiet. At 10:37, the motion light clicked on and stayed on for almost a full minute, even though nothing moved in its range. At 10:50, I heard the dragging sound, closer than the night before, and it didn't stop when I looked. It kept going, slow, wet, like it wanted me to know it was there. I shined the flashlight into the woods and caught pale movement between trunks. It moved low, fast, smooth, like it had practiced moving without noise. Then the beam landed on it and held. It was upright now, not tall but standing. Thin, too thin. Not starved, just wrong. Arms too long, skin like wet concrete, pale, gray, and uneven. It stared at me without blinking. Then, slow and deliberate, it brought its hand up and touched its throat. It made that dry, swallowing sound again. Then it moved its lips like it was trying to speak. No sound came out. Instead, it opened its mouth wider than it should and breathed in. I heard the inhale. It sounded like someone sucking air through a straw. My stomach dropped. It was tasting me. I forced my voice out. Back up. It blinked, slow. Then it stepped toward the shed. Not towards me, toward the shed. It stopped just outside the motion light's range. The light didn't trigger, like the sensor didn't see it. It reached out and pressed fingers to the shed wall, then leaned in and put the side of its head against the wood like someone listening for movement. Inside the shed, I heard a faint scrape. The thing on the outside stiffened. It pressed closer. Then it turned its head back towards me and the corner of its mouth lifted again, and it spoke. Not a clean word, a rough shape of one. A rasp, like air pushed through dry reeds. Then it tried again, clearer. Stay. My blood went cold. It copied me, or copied Darren. It had heard the command somewhere and filed it away. It whispered again, clearer now. Stay. I took a step back without meaning to. My boot hit the chair leg. Its eyes flickered to my movement, tracking fast. It didn't move toward me. It moved toward the chair, like it wanted to understand where I sat, what I used, where my body stayed hours for hours. It took one slow step into the clearing, and the motion light clicked on instantly, bathing it in weak yellow. For the first time, I saw its face fully. No eyebrows, eyes sunken, skin tight, around bone, nose more like a ridge with narrow slits for nostrils, mouth wide and thin-lipped. And then it opened. I saw teeth, not sharp animal teeth, two mini teeth, crowded, different sizes, like they didn't belong together. I stared. Then it did something that made my stomach flip. It tried to copy my expression. It pulled its lips back, lifted its cheeks, in a warped attempt at a smile, like it was testing what faces did. Then it let the mouth fall open again and turned back to the shed. Inside the shed, something hit the wall hard. A thump that made boards shudder. The thing outside jerked like a dog hearing a command. It pressed both hands against the shed door, not pushing hard, just touching. The motion lights flickered. The shed didn't move. The lock held. Then from inside the shed a voice came, muffled but unmistakable. Not Darren's, not mine. A voice that had the shape of a human voice but the wrong weight, like speaking through thick cloth. It said very softly, good. The thing outside froze. It leaned closer, hungry for more. The voice inside said, good boy. My stomach turned. My fingers went numb around the flashlight. The thing outside made a soft sound that could have been a laugh if it wasn't so dry and wrong. Then it turned towards me. This time it took a step towards me, just one. The motion light flickered again. I felt warmth in my jeans, a small leak I couldn't stop. Shame flickered for half a second and then got drowned by fear. I forced my feet to stay planted, forced my voice out. Darren's coming back. I lied. He'll be back any minute. The thing blinked. It swallowed again, and it whispered with a voice that sounded like my voice run through a broken speaker. Stay. Not a question. A test. A rehearsal. Then it stopped. Its head snapped toward the tree line behind me, not the direction it had come from, the opposite direction. It went still like it heard something I couldn't. For a moment, nothing. Then I heard it too. Footsteps. Slow. Human. Relief hit me so hard it made me dizzy. Darren? I called. The footsteps stopped. No answer. Then Darren's voice came from the woods. Not from the truck, not from the clearing. From between trees. Calm, casual. You doing okay up there? My relief evaporated. Because Darren wasn't supposed to be out there. And his voice sounded close but not right. Like someone doing an impression but still working out the timing. The thing in front of me turned its head towards the voice and made a soft, pleased sound like a person chuckling with their mouth closed. Then it slipped backwards, fast and silent, into the trees. The motion lights clicked off and the clearing dropped into darkness. And Darren's voice said again, closer now, you doing okay? I stood frozen, flashlight aimed at the tree line, trying to see. My mouth was dry as sand. I whispered, "No." Silence. Then from the shed, the muffled voice inside said, "Don't answer." My blood turned to ice, and I stared at the shed door. The lock hung still. The forest stayed quiet. And in the dark beyond the clearing, something breathed. Slow, patient, like it had all night. I didn't answer again. I sat back down like my body was on autopilot. Like if I did the same thing as before, the world would snap back into place. The rest of that night was a grind of nerves. Every few minutes, Darren's voice came from different places in the woods. "You cold? Need anything? You still there?" Every time it sounded a little better, a little more like him, like something was tuning itself. At 4:03, the dragging sound circled again. At 4:15, the motion light clicked on, and I saw fresh smears on the shed, as if something had been touching it while I stared into the trees. At 4:22, the shed thumped once from inside, hard. The muffled voice inside whispered, "Don't look away." I didn't know which direction the warning was for. At 4:48, something brushed the back of my chair. Not a shove, not a grab. A touch, like fingers dragging lightly over fabric. I jerked so hard, the chair tipped. I caught myself, stumbled, nearly went down. I spun the flashlight behind me, nothing. But I heard a sound, soft and pleased, from the trees. Then, right by my ear, Darren's voice whispered, "Don't be stupid." I flinched hard enough that I lost my footing. My heels slid on loose dirt, and I went down on my side. Pain flashed up my ribs. My elbow slammed the ground, skin scraping. The flashlight bounced wild, and in that moment, the motion light clicked on again, and I saw the shed door bow outward for a second, not opening, just flexing like something inside pressed hard, not a handprint this time, a face. Flattened against the boards from the inside like someone shoved their head into the wood. You could see where the eyes bulged, where the mouth stretched, then it eased away. The boards settled, the shed went still. I lay there panting, ribs throbbing, elbows burning, and something in me snapped. I couldn't do it again. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care if Darren called me soft. I needed out. I grabbed my phone out of my pocket, out of pure reflex, and saw the screen light up. No bars, no signal, but the phone's audio recorder was open. Not because I opened it, but because it had opened itself. A timer was running, recording. I stared at it like my brain couldn't process the fact. My thumb hovered. I didn't press anything. My little waveform bounced, picking up sound. I hit stop with a shaking thumb. The file saved automatically with the timestamp. 2:53 a.m. I stared at the number. That was earlier. That was when the Darren voice first showed up. My heart thudded once. Hard. I hit play. At first there was only my breathing and the faint creak of the chair. Then clear as day, my own voice, my exact voice said softly, "Stay." A pause. Then Darren's voice, perfectly calm. "You doing okay out there?" Then a sound that wasn't any voice I recognized. A wet, pleased exhale, like something savoring it. I slammed the phone screen off like it would erase it. From inside the shed, the muffled voice said, "Firm now. Sit." I froze. "What?" I whispered. From inside. "Sit." The world was the word was clearer now, like whatever was in there had more control. My mouth went dry. "Who are you?" Silence. Then from the woods, Darren's voice said, "You don't want to do that." I swung the flashlight towards the voice, beam cutting through trunks. Nothing. "Darren!" I shouted, cracked and raw. Silence. From inside the shed, the muffled voice said almost gently, "He isn't here." I looked at the clock. 4:59. 1 minute. I forced myself back into the chair. My whole body shook. I stared at the shed door like staring could make it harmless. At 5:12, headlights swept into the clearing. Darren's truck rolled in and Darren got out. Real Darren, in the flesh. Boots crunching dirt, breath visible. He looked at me, then at the dirt where I fell, then at my elbow. His eyes narrowed. "What happened?" "Something touched me," I said. "It talked, it used your voice, it—" "Did you answer it?" Darren cut in. "No," I said. "I didn't answer it, but I—" Darren walked towards the shed like he didn't want to waste time. He crouched and studied the churned dirt by the door. Did it get close? He asked. Yeah, I said it was in the clearing. Darren stood slowly. His face didn't show surprise. It showed irritation, like something went off schedule. You're done, he said. No, I said immediately, then hated myself. I want answers. Darren stared at me for a long moment. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He pulled a keyring from his pocket. The keys jingled softly in the silence. He stepped up to the padlock and paused, just for a second, like he was listening, like he was confirming something only he could hear. Then he unlocked it. A small click. He slid the lock off and held it. My throat closed. What are you doing? I asked. Darren didn't look back. Shut up, he said quietly. Not harsh, just urgent. And don't move. He put his fingers on the door edge and pulled it open just an inch. Not enough to see inside, just enough to crack, for a darkness to show. Cold air spilled out, not normal cold, not night air cold. It felt like the inside of a freezer had been sealed for years. Darren leaned close, careful not to put his face in the crack, and spoke softly into it like he was feeding an animal through a gate. You did good, Darren said. From inside the shed, a voice answered, clearer than it should have been. It sounded like my voice, not my voicemail greeting, not kind of like me. My voice, my cadence, my tiredness. It said softly, good, you stayed. I felt my stomach drop like I was falling. Darren's face stayed hard. He said, not him, the other. The voice inside paused like it was thinking, then said one word, hungry. Darren's jaw tightened. Not yet. A soft sound came from inside, disappointed, maybe, or amused. Then from the woods, far enough I couldn't pin it down, something answered, a pleased sound, like someone chuckling with their mouth closed. Darren shut the door immediately, and relocked it with quick, practiced motion, like he had done this before and hated it every time. He pocketed the keys and turned to me. You don't come back, he said. My mouth opened, but my brain was still stuck on the voice sounding like me. What is that? I whispered. Darren exhaled through his nose. It's a problem. You keeping something in there? I said. And something out here wants it. Darren's eyes flicked to the tree line like he didn't want to look too long. Yeah. And you're paying people to sit out here like bait? I said. The anger finally cut through the shock. That's what this is. Darren's face went flat. Nobody makes you take the job. You didn't tell me what it was. I told you the important parts, he said. Don't go inside. Don't leave your post. I stared at him, chest heaving, ribs aching. Darren reached into his jacket, pulled out the envelope, and shoved it in my hand like he wanted the transaction finished. Take your money, he said. Forget this place. What if I don't? I asked. Darren held my gaze and said quieter. It learns. He nodded towards the woods, not the shed. It learns voices. It learns habit. It learns the shape of you, and once it learns enough, it doesn't need you to answer. My mouth went dry. You're not special, Darren said. You're not chosen. You're not the main character in the story. You're just meat that can be convinced to sit still for a price. That did it. That broke whatever illusion I'd been holding. I backed towards the truck like a man in a dream. Darren drove me out in silence. Trees whipped past, headlights curved the road, my elbow throbbed, my ribs felt bruised deep. When we hit pavement again, my phone instantly lit up a signal, notifications poured in, texts, emails, missed calls, normal life calling back in. For about 3 minutes, I stared at the little SOS 911 in the corner of my screen, like it was the only solid thing in the world. I opened the dialer, typed 911, stared at it, my thumb hovered. What do you even say? There's a shed in the woods, something thin and gray learned my voice. Something inside the shed talked like it was using my throat as a template. Please send help. I hit backspace until the screen was blank again. Darren didn't look at me, but his voice came low, like he already knew what I was doing. Don't, he said. I swallowed and stared out the window the rest of the ride, trying to convince myself that if I could just get back under streetlights, this would turn into a story I told later with an embarrassed laugh. Darren dropped me off at the gas station lot where he'd picked me up the first night. The place looked the same, trash can by the door, poster for lottery tickets, fluorescent lights making everything look tired. I sat there a second with the door open, cold air biting my face, and watched two people come out of the store arguing about scratch offs, like the world was normal. I almost walked back inside and told the clerk. I almost said, "Hey, if a guy comes in here asking if you've seen me, don't answer him." Instead, I shut the door and stood there with the envelope in my hand like I'd won something. Before I went inside my apartment, I took a picture of my scraped elbow and my bruised ribs in the bathroom mirror. Not for sympathy, not for insurance, for proof, for myself. Because some part of me already knew how fast your brain tries to sand down sharp edges of when it's the only way to get through a day. I got home, showered twice, scrubbed my hands until they were raw, threw my clothes in the wash and started it even though it was early enough my downstairs neighbor would hate me. I tried to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the face impression pressing in against the shed boards from inside. I heard my own voice, softly. "Good, you stayed." By noon, I'd convinced myself it was over, that Darren was right. Take the money, fix my life, never go back. Don't talk about it. I even did normal things on purpose. I ate a sandwich, checked my bank app, called my landlord, and left a message about paying next month on time like it meant something. Then without thinking, I opened the voice recording on my phone again. The file was still there. 2:53 a.m. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering. Then I deleted it. Not because I didn't believe it, because I did. The delete confirmation popped up, and for a second my thumb shook. I deleted it anyway. Then I turned my phone off and left it off. That night I slept with the lights on. Not because I thought the light would protect me, because I needed to see my own room, my own walls, my own stupid ceiling stain that looked like Florida. Around 2:40 a.m., I woke up because my ribs hurt when I rolled over. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to my building's normal sounds. Someone's tea through the wall, the car alarm down the street, the radiator ticking. Normal. Then I heard something outside my bedroom door. A soft drag across the hallway carpet. Slow, wet. It stopped. Then came the dry swallowing sound. I held my breath and stared at the door until my eyes burned. The sound stopped. Minutes passed. Nothing. My brain tried to reason it away. Pipes, neighbor's dog, my imagination catching up with me. Then my doorknob shifted. Not turning, just testing. A tiny jiggle, like fingertips exploring the shape. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. A full minute went by. 2. Then my phone, still off, still blackened, buzzed once on the nightstand. Not a ring, not a notification, a single vibration. Like a reminder. From the other side of the door, a voice whispered so close I could hear breath in it. It sounded exactly like Darren. Calm, casual, like we were back under fluorescent lights. "You doing okay out there?" I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from making noise. The voice paused like it was listening for the smallest answer. A gasp, a sob, anything it could use. Then softer. "Please, go." The doorknob stopped moving. The drag sound returned, moving away down the hallway. Slow, patient, like it didn't need to rush, like it already knew where I was. And lying there in my apartment with the lights on and my money on the kitchen table and my ribs still bruised from falling in that clearing, I finally understood what the $1,000 was for. It wasn't to guard a shed. It was to teach something how to find me. The end.
Wow. Okay. But like that's a lot of money for a few hours.
I know. I would should
Yeah.
make it my
Same.
pet.
Yep. Would be best.
It's creepy though.
Start
Ugh.
charging him rent.
I know, right? The only thing that like freaks me out is like him hearing himself inside the shed would freak me out. Like that's what
Yeah.
would get me. I don't want to be locked into a shed. Ew. But like, ew. Ugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been on a Zeldry kick lately. I think there's just so really good like descriptive ways that he can just kind of like invoke this sense of like thrill and fear, and I really like it.
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm. And
Alright.
yeah, it's creepy. But I'm looking forward to yours, even
Alright.
though I know it's gory.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of weird. It's not like really bad, but
Okay.
yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna be reading another story by Saturday. We've read his
Mhm.
stories before. All his info, of course, will be in the show notes. And it's called Soft Gray Mouth, which I don't enjoy that title. It makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I
That's
hope the rest of the story also makes you uncomfortable. So, you ready? All right, let's get started. Soft Gray Mouth. I wasn't there when they first found him. I think it was an older woman who saw him while walking her dog. The man was standing in the river, reaching out to nothing, speaking in tongues. He was wearing a jumpsuit from the South Dakota Department of Corrections. The woman hurried back home and called the authorities. That got the ball rolling. The police brought him in. They fingerprinted him and checked the records, thinking he was some kind of escaped convict. Turns out that wasn't the case. There was no prisoner missing, and there was no outstanding warrants for his arrest. Then again, that was all quite hard to tell. No one knew who the hell he was. He wasn't communicating, so they decided to call him John River. River instead of Doe, because of where they found him. John River was a tall man, supposedly late 20s, early 30s. Prison and gang tattoos suggested he was connected to a criminal network in Chicago. That led us nowhere. For all intents and purposes, he was complete mystery. That's where I was brought in. I am a licensed clinical social worker, or LCSW. I mostly handle case assessments and documentation for upcoming placements, but it's a system that's been struggling for years. I could go on and on about the effects of the opioid epidemic and the sudden rise of youth homelessness, but that is sadly part of the accepted world. We expected to see homeless people in substance abuse. We don't expect someone like John River. Since John wasn't deemed an immediate threat, I was brought in to make an assessment on whether it was appropriate to house him at Crisis Stabilization Center while we figured out his identity. It was supposed to be a short, informal meeting. We had already made up their minds about him. I met John on an early Tuesday morning in late May. He was still wearing his dirty prison jumpsuit when I sat down across from him. He'd just been out of the river for a couple of hours. We were at a holding cell at the county jail, a temporary measure. As you might suspect, we don't have a lot of resources set aside for this kind of event. I mean, how could we? We never met someone like John. He had a shaved head and this tired, empty smile. A blank stare like he forgot to blink. His jumpsuit was dirty all the way up to his knees where the river had reached. He must have stood there for hours. Even with the jumpsuit, I could see the edges of his all-covering tattoos lined with a couple of rough scars. The thought struck me that maybe they hadn't actually tried to talk to him like a person. Maybe they just targeted him. I went at it from a different angle. You look hungry, I said. Are you hungry? John's eyes slowly turned my way, like an icebreaker making its way through a glacier. I bet you're hungry, I repeated. I could get you something if you want. He hissed a little. At first, I thought it was a threat, but it turned into an unpleasant, raspy cough. He was trying to talk, but his voice was broken, like he'd been screaming at the top of his lungs. Just tell me what you'd like. How about a cheeseburger? He blinked, turned his head sideways, nodded a little. His arm went up like he was writing something in the air with the tip of his fingers. And he frowned a little. Am I hungry? He asked. Am I? His voice came through like a broken speaker. I think you are, I said. You look hungry. Sometimes when people are in shock, you gotta be patient. John was responding at all, and that was a step in the right direction. After much deliberation, he nodded again, and with that, his tired smile returned. Yes, said I am hungry. Little by little, we got him to speak, but there wasn't much for him to say. He had no idea who he was or how he got there. He said there were little flashes of something else, but he couldn't explain exactly what it was. We brought him a burger and some fries, and in between bites, he would try to explain to the best of his ability. Not a place, not a person, not a home. I don't know. If you look at it long enough, you'll see there's nothing inside. Inside what? I asked. He wiped his mouth and shook his head. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. And you have no idea who you are or how you got here? I know one thing, he said, holding up a french fry. I'm hungry. That's a start. I made an assessment that John wasn't a threat and that it was okay to send him to one of our crisis stabilization centers for now. However, there was an issue on the matter of jurisdiction. See, the woman who found John hurried home before calling the authorities. She lived in another part of the county where he was originally found. So both sides had an argument for the other to take him in. Was it a matter of where he was found, or was it who brought him in? While they figured out the paperwork, he was deemed fit for temporary placement at our primary care facility. For those who've never been there, let me paint you a picture. A single-story building with greasy windows, gray flat carpet squares, and a low padded ceiling. 2 bathrooms, but only one works. The chairs by the reception area are bolted down. They had to take away the TV. One staffer on call for about 12 hours of the day, with a guard dropping by for 30 minutes or so once per shift. There's a psychiatrist nurse on my rotation who comes by once a day, and we have a psychologist on call for remote assessment. That's mostly for extreme cases. There are 3 more facilities just like it, and I rotate from one to the other all day. I basically live in my car. To be fair, the beds are pretty nice. Sheets are washed regularly. John was lucky in a way. There was only one other person at the facility when he got there, a kid named Chris. Chris had just turned 18 and got kicked out of his house. He had an uncle on the West Coast that he was going to stay with, but there'd been a mix up with scheduling, and he ended up on the street. It was a temporary measure. Chris was just staying for a couple days while he got his affairs in order. Helping people get back on their feet is best case scenario. Most of the time we were treading water and seeing the same people over and over again. When John got there, he didn't seem all that bothered. He was happy to have his own room, didn't mind sharing a bathroom. He took a shower, got some secondhand clothes, and spent most of the afternoon reading comic books and snacking on roasted sunflower seed, that salty brand with the blue logo. The on-site staffer with the official title of behavioral health technician was Sandy. She was a 40-year-old mother of 3 who'd heard every lie in the book. Sandy was a natural skeptic, but she didn't know what to make of John. She first thought that it was an escaped convict, but there were no reports of anyone matching his description going missing. That stumped her. I don't get the jumpsuit, she admitted. Why come all this way here and just stop? Why don't keep going? Maybe he's got nowhere to go. We were having a 10-minute yogurt lunch before I rushed off to another meeting. Sally usually joined me to catch up on the topics. Do you think he's hurt? She asked. Some kind of brain thing? Doesn't look like it. And if he's been like this for a while, someone would be looking for him. And if it was fresh, he'd have wounds. You said he doesn't have anything? Nothing like that? I cleared him on intake. There was a bit of tension when Chris joined in. He could be a bit difficult to get along with, but John was surprisingly patient. The 2 of them spent most of the day in the recreation room playing board games. John was a bit slow on the uptake, but that didn't seem to bother either of them. As long as there was an ample supply of sandwiches, he paid attention. Chris could jabber on and on about whatever he wanted, ranging from the arts of custom guitar pedals to the majesty of the St. Bernard dog breed. John just nodded along, ate a sandwich, and that was it. I spent the rest of the afternoon in phone calls. I made my rounds. They brought up the idea of bringing John in for a dental checkup. There might be dental records, but then we'd have to know where to start. We didn't have a hometown or even a home state. He didn't have a particular accent, and even if we had all that, someone had to pay for it. John wasn't insured. We didn't even know if he was a legal U.S. citizen. If we could find a supporting diagnosis of some kind, he might have been eligible for a long-term residential treatment facility, or possibly a state psychiatric hospital. He would need several sessions to get that kind of diagnosis, and we weren't equipped to keep him long-term. Most folks never stay more than a couple of days. Now we were looking at weeks, maybe months. The next day, I woke up to 8 messages. One by one, our suggestions walked straight into weeds. No one wanted to take on John as responsibility, and there were no clear indications on where to send him. That was basically without an identity was bad enough, but that wasn't clear as the county he belonged to make it even worse. There were layers after layers of complications, ending with a lot of dead ends and political refusals. But when I got there in the morning, it wasn't the limbo that bothered me, or Sandy. It was something we noticed in John's room. There was a big splotch on the wall, like someone had been tearing off the wallpaper. You think he did that? I asked. Who else? She got me there. I looked a little closer. The edges of the wallpaper were torn into strips, but there was nothing on the floor. He must have thrown it away or flushed it down the toilet. Maybe stress reaction. Sandy, on the other hand, looked at the bed. He hasn't slept, she said. You sure? Yeah, she said, pointing at the covers. I tuck him in like this, see? No one else does that. So either he slept in that chair, or he didn't sleep at all. What about the safety check? Mitch stopped by once around midnight, but I don't think he checked. Just noting, no running, screaming, talking, nothing like that. John seemed all right. If he hadn't slept all night, it didn't show. He was up and about, letting Chris chat away as they headed off to the corner shop. That day was mostly spent doing evaluations. We got on the on-call psychologist to come and do an assessment, but he only had half an hour. His findings were inconclusive, as one might expect. John could be suffering from any number of conditions, and there are a couple of things we could exclude, but you can't make diagnoses solely on negatives. We got another visit from the sheriff's office, but there wasn't much to share. John wasn't suspected of a crime, and there were no charges to press, so they'd be letting go of the case entirely, at least until they could figure out which county he belonged to. I made my rounds to some of the other facilities. Nothing exciting and nothing I can say much about. You see these people who slip through the cracks in the system, and after a while, that's all you see. Cracks. You forget what it's like when things work intended. What it's like when things work as intended. I'll be the first to admit I was worried about what might happen to John. There's no telling where he might end up. While John was having dinner, I managed to sneak off with Chris for a while. I wanted to pick his brain about his new friend. What's your impression? I asked. Has he told you anything? I mean, he is sort of just parroting, Chris said. Like, if I bring up a good movie, he agrees. It's like talking to a mirror. Have you learned anything about him? Not really, Chris shrugged. He seems to believe his name really is John River, and he's really hungry a lot. I've seen him peel the finish off chairs and eat it. Harry's now brought that. The what? The wood finish, Chris repeated. Check the chairs. It's like missing pieces. He just picks it and eats it. I checked the wooden chairs in the rec room, just like he said. There were patches. I checked the wooden chairs in the rec room, and just like he said, there were patches of missing finish where the wood had gone pale. That made it the second time John had been found eating things he shouldn't, and yet we saw him eating most of it all the time. He had a second portion for dinner and asked for a third. When he was denied, I almost saw a hint of emotion, I think. Made note of it, but it wasn't really big enough to deal with to get him in trouble. If anything, we were worried. It could be the sign of some sign. It could be the sign. It could be the sign of some kind of underlying trauma. A lot of folks who have been denied food for a long time tend to binge, and there has to be a reason why John was the way he was. Something must have happened. While most of the day was uneventful, I asked Sandy to keep an eye on him while I drove back and forth to the other facilities. I got a couple of updates. For example, he'd been found chewing the heads off chess pieces, and he might have drunk a little hand soap. Not the strangest thing I've seen, but a clear sign something was off. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Sandy. She asked me to come right away. When I got there, John was still in his room. Sandy was visibly shaken. I could see something had changed in her body language. It seemed smaller, somehow, like she crawled into herself. I've already called Mitch, she said. He got a spoon from the kitchen. A spoon? It's... She rolled her eyes a little, looking for the right words. I don't know. See for yourself. John was sitting in his room, in a chair, facing away from the door. He was scraping drywall into his hand and licking up the dust like a dog drinking from a bowl. He was taking it slow and steady, savoring the sensation. He didn't seem to care that we were looking at him. John, what are you doing? I'm hungry, he said. You can't eat that, John. That's drywall. I'm hungry. He scraped a little more. I stepped forward, but Sandy put her hand on my shoulder. John's head snapped my way, like I was a scavenger trying to poach his kill. There was something about his eye that caught me off guard. Something predatory. Sandy shook her head, muttering a no under her breath. John turned his attention back to the wall, scraping more and more into the palm of his hand. His tongue lapped it up, and the process started over and over and over again. His whole mouth had turned gray from the dust. By the time Mitch got there, John had eaten a hand-sized chunk of drywall. He wasn't even bothering with the spoon anymore. He'd broken pieces off and bit down like they were slices of succulent honeycomb. His eyes kind of glazed over. He didn't seem to react to the chemicals or the taste. It was all instinct to him. We had to get him to stop, but we'd have to use Mitch to do it. Mitch is a big guy, about 6'4", maybe 250 pounds, but I could tell he did not want to do this. John was a thin, wiry guy. The gang tattoos didn't help. After mustering up a bit of courage, he tapped on the door frame with a knock. "All right, time's up," Mitch said. "Let's get you to the kitchen, my man. We'll get you something tastier." John didn't answer. He just took another bite. He was barely chewing anymore. I could see the bulge in his throat as a solid chunk slid down his throat. Mitch took a couple of steps forward, and John turned to look him in the eye. "Don't you want something good?" Mitch asked. "That's not food, my guy." "I'm hungry." "I bet there are a lot of other things," Mitch said, trying to a smile. "I bet you're a bit worried, huh? A lot of stuff going on that's out of your control." "No," John said, shaking his head. "Hungry." Mitch sighed and offered a hand to help John out of the chair. John didn't take it. Mitch stepped closer to pull him out. John lunged forward, snapping his teeth so loudly I thought he'd clapped his hands. Mitch pulled his hand back and fell backwards, tripping over his own feet. He fell over hard, getting the air knocked out of his lungs. We backed away, pulling Mitch back to his feet. John was slowly creeping out of his chair, crouched like a skulking animal. I could see the drywall coating his mouth, turning it a sickly gray. He'd been biting so hard his gums were bleeding and his teeth were burned off. Even without something to eat, he was still chewing, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. I could hear his stomach growling. "John?" Sandy whispered. "John, what's happening?" "I'm hungry." Sandy called the police while Mitch and I tried to keep him calm. John ended up on the rec room couch, stripping cheap leather off and rolling it into balls. We figured it wasn't even worth fighting him over it. Most of the furniture was cheap donor stuff, but we didn't want him to get sick. But from the looks of it, it was too late. By the time the cops came by, he had swallowed about half the couch cushion and part of the armrest. Chris was just standing in the corner watching the whole thing play out. He was leaving to see his uncle later that night, so he wasn't about to get involved anytime soon. Mitch and I figured it was better to let the cops deal with this. When a patrol finally showed up, Sandy and I tried to explain the situation. We didn't have much to say. They'd heard about the mysterious river stranger already. The part about eating furniture was new, though. "You want him trespass?" One of them asked. "We can't keep him," I explained. "And he refuses to stop, so we'll take him then. Or do you just want us to ask him to stop?" "He's not gonna stop," Sandy added. "He said it. He's hungry." "Well, everyone gets full eventually." I wasn't so sure about that. They went into the rec room where John had gotten up from the couch. He was folding up playing cards and swallowing them whole. The two officers took a moment and stared at him. Now, I'll give him credit. They tried talking him down, but John was not having it. The moment they got close, he faced them. It was going to be a fight, no doubt about it. He couldn't be reasoned with. They flanked him from either side. As one of them drew his attention, the other advanced with handcuffs. They managed to wrestle him to the floor and put his hands behind his back, knocking over a table lamp and a chair as they slammed him down. John was like a rabid animal, not angry over being handled, but over his inability not to use his hands to feed. One of the officers paused for a moment when they spotted blood on the floor. Maybe he thought they'd been too rough. Sandy just shook her head. "It's his gums," she clarified. "It's not you." Pulled him up and dragged him out the front door. But the moment they got him outside, something changed. John snapped his head straight backwards like a whip. It was hard and fast enough to snap a normal person's neck. He clasped his teeth shut, biting down on the shoulder of the arresting officer's jacket. Surprised, he pulled away, letting John go. John flapped backwards, landing hard on concrete. He still munched on the piece of fabric, but there was also a couple drops of blood. The officer was holding his shoulder, looking like he'd seen a ghost. It wasn't a deep wound, but seeing someone almost break their neck like that, it wasn't natural. I'd never seen anyone move like that. We all just stood there, looking at John as he calmly rolled to his stomach and got to his knees. The other officer had his gun out. Chris was filming the whole thing from the window. By the time John got to his feet, they'd asked him to stop moving at least 4 times. Backup was on the way. Finally, he stopped. "I need you to turn around," one of the officers said. Turn around and get on your knees. John smacked his lips. He still had a little bit of fabric at the corner of his mouth. There was blood on it. He slurped it up. I could see his pupils dilate. The officer kept talking in a neutral tone. Go right ahead and turn around. We have to bring you in. I'm hungry, John stated. Turn around. I'm not asking again. And it's like I saw something click in John's mind, like a light turned on. His eyes narrowed. Your food, he gasped. I can eat you. Now, I know these two officers. They weren't the kind of people to shoot first and ask questions later. They'd been clear as they could be. Sandy couldn't look, but I couldn't look away either. She hid her face behind her hands, hoping nothing would happen. But it did. John took 2 steps forward, got a warning, kept walking. A shot went off. Now, I doubt what I saw, but I'm sure I saw it. As I jumped, as my pulse kicked, as soon as the shot rang out, there was a puff of smoke. Not from the gun, but from John. It's like they shot straight into a wall. I could see a hole in his clothes, but he was still standing. He wasn't even looking down. His eyes were fixed on the officer he bit. John didn't react at all. Not at all. Your food, he repeated, like he couldn't believe it. I can eat you. He pulled at his handcuffs until something in his left hand snapped, setting him free. The cuffs dangled from his right hand as he took another step forward. A couple of fingers bent at a weird angle. I covered my ears and closed my eyes as another 3 shots rang out. When I looked up, one of the officers was in full sprint with John a couple of steps behind him. They all disappeared round the corner as Sandy locked the door, backing away from the windows. No one said anything. We just looked at one another, trying to figure out what the fuck just happened. There was more gunfire outside and screaming. A lot of screaming. My hand shook as I heard John's words in my head. We were food. He could eat us. 3 more patrol cars arrived shortly after. One of them escorted us out of the building. The others went ahead to find whatever happened to the other officers. More people were coming. We could hear sirens in the distance. Sandy headed off to get Chris to the train station while I headed off. I think she just wanted some distance. I had other facilities to check on my daily round, and doing some honest-to-God work might help me keep my mind off of things for a while. Besides, there was no telling what might happen if I stayed. I kept getting updates. It didn't take long until they found the officers. They had to be brought out by an ambulance, but that's all the details I got. They were alive, but something had clearly happened. Mitch said it looked bad. They'd lost track of John. There'd be a struggle, and someone got seriously hurt. They were talking immediate surgery. But they didn't bring him in, so we weren't safe to go back. There was little we could do but wait. For a while, it went on like normal. I checked other facilities. I got an update on Chris and how he'd made it to his uncle. He sent me the video he took of John, but I couldn't bring myself to look. After a couple of days, Sandy got back to her job. They had to bring in a new guy to the center, so she didn't have much of a choice. But she'd get up and running. At least this person with issues was recognized and who had an ID. Kept hearing disturbing things. People swore they saw someone sulking around town. Some folks by the river swore they found a pile of half-eaten fish along the trail. A couple of business owners around town had their trash cans raided. I mean, things like this happen all the time, but I couldn't help but wonder. And then there were more unsettling implications. There had been a break-in at the graveyard. Someone had disturbed a freshly dug grave. That's all they told us. Personally, I only saw one thing. I drive by the same field every morning when I go to work, and I spotted something. Right by the fence, there was a dead cow. The other cows had gathered around it, mooing like a funeral procession. Then again, maybe nothing, but kept reminding me of him. John could be hungry enough to eat a cow. About a month passed. Even absurd things could look menial in the rearview mirror, I suppose. That is, until they come knocking at your door. It wasn't so much of a knock, though. I was coming home from work. I have a small townhouse on the outskirts of the city's 2nd floor. Nice place, not too big. I dragged myself up the stairs, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. I pushed the door shut behind me and kicked off my shoes. But then I stopped. I hadn't heard the click. From the door closing. In fact, it bounced back open again, the door handle poking me in the back. Turning around, I saw a hand in the doorway. Now the shock of seeing something like that so close to me so suddenly could stop a heart. I swung around and backed into my apartment, gasping. A long arm stretched inside, reaching for the light switch. It flicked it off. I took out my phone, put my thumb to the light, and turned on the flashlight. It was turned down, and for a brief moment, I saw a pair of secondhand jeans standing in front of me, with a pair of gray feet at the end. There was something wrong with them, but I only caught a brief glimpse. They looked softer, flabby. A cold hand closed over mine, blocking the flashlight. The feet disappeared into darkness with the rest of the room. A wet mouth hushed me, sending rough splatters across my cheek. You got anything good? A voice asked. I could hear the hiss of a moist tongue, the slurping of something salivating. Let's check. It continued. Show me the kitchen. With a hand grasping me, I walked towards the kitchen. I held my breath. It only took a couple of seconds, but I could hear every detail with superhuman clarity. The heavy smack of bare footsteps. The voice was coming from higher up, almost reaching the ceiling. There was also something else. There was this constant smacking and chewing noise, even while it talked. Like there was more than one mouth. It had to be John, but it sounded nothing like him. There was also this long, constant groan, like a stomach that could never settle. I made it to the kitchen. The hand reached up my neck, not forcefully, but enough to show I was not in control. The fingers were impossibly long and leathery, more belt than skin. I was turned around, but I saw the lights from the fridge. A shadow was cast upon the kitchen wall. I could barely make out the shape. There were too many arms. Glass shattered against the kitchen counter. It fell in my pickle jar. With a slurp and a crunch, it spoke. Why'd you say I was hungry? It asked. It made me pause. I could feel my pulse pushing against the leathery hand on my throat. What? It was the only word I could muster. You said I looked hungry. You said I looked like hunger. No, I said you look hungry. What do you mean? Another crunch, this time glass. It didn't skip a beat. How the hell could he eat and talk at the same time? I just thought you were hungry. I was making conversations, I said. I wasn't identifying you. Everyone gets hungry. You do? There was a short pause. More crunching. Something warm dripped on my shoulder. Something smelling of fat and iron. You asked me, he continued. You asked if I was hungry. You made me choose. That's not how it works, I said, swallowing hard. That's just how you say it. The fridge door opened again. I saw a glob of something gray and bleeding on my shoulder, slowly dripping to the kitchen floor. The door closed. I could hear the squeeze of a ketchup bottle. I'm not going to eat you. I didn't say anything. I tried to keep my breath steady. I'm hungry. I'll be hungry tomorrow, too. The day after that. There's no rush. I took a shallow breath, straining my eyes to look to the side. I couldn't see anything. Something moved. Maybe a shrug. It was mumbling, talking to itself. Everything gets eaten. There was a tap on my shoulder as something dragged itself away and let me go. The ketchup bottle was squeezed dry. I could hear it getting crunched and chewed. I stayed there by the fridge, listening to something immense move away from me. I could have reached for my phone. Maybe I could have taken a picture, but I wouldn't have moved for anything. I wanted to know. I said, it's almost funny. Sure, I said, my mouth dry. Funny. That's all right, I said with a sigh. Being hungry is better than being nothing. What do you mean? There was a pause. It felt so unreal. I could hear cars passing on the street outside. How can something so mundane be allowed to happen at a time like that? You'll see, I answered. Later. I heard the click of the door. It was quiet, but to me it was like a starting pistol. I flicked the lights on. The apartment was full of bloody drag marks and chunks of gray, dead flesh. Pieces of glass were scattered over the floor and the kitchen counter. Brine was still dripping. There was nothing left of the ketchup bottle. John had left my pork chops behind. He had literally just grabbed whatever was closest on the shelf, not caring what it was. It was such a stupid thought, but it bothered me. Why would he chug a bottle of ketchup over biting into a meal? Maybe hunger means different things from one person to the next. I haven't heard anyone experiencing something similar. No one has talked about John River or the way he changed. I don't think we ever figured out who he really was. Looking back at it, I'm having a hard time remembering what his face really looked like. It's like thinking of a concept, not a person. Not a real person, at least. I attributed a couple of things I'm certain when writing this down, but looking back at it, I'll be honest, I'm not sure. I don't know what could have happened to him to become. I don't know what could have happened for him to become something like this. But exactly what? Well, I'm not sure I want to know. I'm not going to go looking. I don't want to hear that soft gray mouth ever again, but I think I will. The end.
Ooh.
It's icky.
It was icky, but at one point I just wanted to burst out laughing. And then, like, the whole time I kept thinking, like, Chris is the realest motherfucker.
Just like videotaping. He's like, bro, I don't know, man.
He's like, man, this is not my business. I got places to be later. Like, I'll record it for you, but, like, I'm not involved.
He's like, brothers eating chairs. I don't know what to tell you.
When you started off with that, I was like, oh, I know who this reminds me of. And then it just got so much worse.
Yes.
Oh.
It's icky. I don't like that he has too many arms.
No.
I also thought it was interesting when the cop shot him. It was like shooting drywall because he was full of drywall.
Like if you eat enough drywall, you'll become.
You are drywall now.
You are what.
Oh.
So it was creepy. I like.
Yeah.
You did a really.
It was good.
You had a really good pick.
Yes. It was, yeah. Saturday is a very good author.
Very.
He's
good.
right up my alley. So
that is made for you right there.
It's Vicky. I like it.
Oh.
But anyways, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed. This one was a little longer than normal, so long episode.
Well, we did a short one last time. It's mix and match,
up for
variety, you know.
Yeah. The usual. Make sure if you guys are listening on YouTube, give us a like, comment. Make sure you subscribe. It helps us out a lot. All that good stuff. All of our author information will be in the show notes. You can also find our Discord down there, so come hang out with us there. You got anything else you need to know?
Nope, you put it perfectly. If you can't find our Discord on this one, it's probably on one of our other ones.
It's there somewhere.
It's somewhere. So
it's around.
Sometimes I mix and match.
You can also find us on Spotify too.
True, you can also.
If you're listening on Spotify,
YouTube Music, and the official website. Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, I guess we'll leave you there for that one.
Until next time.
Time to go eat dinner.
Oh God, no. Naughty.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.